Hello, friend, and welcome to episode 0 of Jackknife Chicken Truck. What is Jackknife Chicken Truck, you ask? Well, to be honest, I don't know, and hopefully you can help me figure that out. Where did the name come from, you ask? Well, a few months ago, I was hanging out with some fellow geeks at a meetup at Sorgatron Media, and we were talking about random stories. A guy brought up about the phrase "it pays." He was in some other city, I forget where, someplace down south, and there's an accident on the highway. A truck full of chicken jackknifed. And the phrase that pays that day was jackknife chicken truck. For some reason, we all got obsessed with this term and started Googling it to see what we could find. We then started tagging each other with jackknife chicken truck on Twitter. The next day, I was still obsessed with this name and decided to see if a domain name was available. And it was. So I bought it. Now I'm the proud owner of jackknifechickenTruck.com. Didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. But if you go back a few months, back in December, I bought a bunch of equipment for my other podcast, Stream of Conscience Podcast. My buddy Joe and I have been doing this podcast for almost 2.5 years now. Well, actually 2 years as of July, but we've been airing it for about a year and a half, actually. So, we talked about pretty much anything on that podcast. And we started out with video and audio, and then went back to just audio. We then started doing a couple live episodes here and there, and found out people were loving the live episodes and were tuning in, and we had a lot of interaction from the audience. So I decided to upgrade the equipment because it sounded like crap for a while. And as I got better equipment, I realized, hey, I now have enough equipment that I could do this with more than one project. Get some extra use out of it, if you will. So I kept telling myself I should do another podcast. I don't know what I'd do it about. And then I realized, whatever, we'll worry about this later. So now that I have Jackknife Chicken Truck, and I have all this equipment, I figure why not go solo? Because one of the complaints I get from a lot of people is that I don't talk that much in my own podcast with Joe. Joe tends to talk about everything. I kind of steer the conversations, and Joe talks about stuff, and I put input in. When there's more than just Joe and I always seem to try and steer the conversation so they keep things lively. I might not talk a lot, but I do add an aspect of control, I guess. At least that's what my buddy Dave says. So here I am, doing a podcast on my own, with just me to fill the dead air. Joe might be a guest here and there, but mainly it's going to be about me talking about stuff that comes to mind. Hopefully people will enjoy this podcast. I know I should enjoy doing it because it gives me another project to work on. Like I don't have a lot. So a little bit about myself. My name is Joel Cox. I live in Pittsburgh. I'm 40. I'm married to my wonderful wife, Tara Lover. And I work for a company called Wesco. I'm a database engineer by day. You might be asking, what is a database engineer? Well, basically, I run reports. And I get data out of the database and give it to people in forms they need. I also add and remove items from the catalog and change pricing for B2C. We're mainly a B2B company, but enough about that. I've worked in IT. I've worked at a recycling company. I have a love for tech. I've always been a problem solver. I grew up in Pittsburgh. My mom and my dad. My dad was an operating engineer. My mom was a nurse who then became a school nurse. But because of my dad, I learned how to fix things and repair things. I also had an obsession with taking things apart when I was younger. That became an interest into soldering and electronics. When I was about 5, my dad taught me how to solder and gave me his 201 set, which had 200 projects you could build by using these wire wraps with components to build stuff. I was in love with it. And after that, I started spending a lot of my money at Radio Shack on components and projects. I was always tinkering, trying to build stuff. When I was about 6 or 7, I wanted to build an airplane. So I got some 2x4s and started putting it together. Unfortunately, I had no aerospace engineering skills at 6 or 7. My dad did buy me an RC airplane. We put it together, and we broke it on the third flight and never flew it again. I've always been obsessed with flight as well. Fast forward to 2014, when I got into drones. Actually, it's 2015. Anyway, I was obsessed with drones, and I started flying those. Well, attempting to fly. It took me a good year and a half before I got to the point where I could actually get one in the air for more than one battery. Now, it's been literally 3 years and a month, and I can now fly without crashing. If I do something stupid, of course I'll crash. But if you're not crashing, you're not learning. I also like playing electronics. I love dealing with microcontrollers and building stuff. I guess you could say I do a little bit of everything. I've also written an ebook called The Art of Score. So technically, I'm an international author because my book has been downloaded in other countries. I'm also an international podcaster because after checking the metrics for my other podcast, my podcast has been downloaded in Russia, Great Britain, United States, China, United Emirates, I believe it's called. Basically, my podcast has been all over the world, which is kind of cool. I guess you could say I'm also a UAG operator because I fly on unmanned aerial vehicles and unmanned ground vehicles, hence RC cars and drones. I like tinkering and always trying to figure out how to do stuff. If I'm not figuring something out, there's probably something wrong. But here I am recording a new episode 0. I recorded an episode before, but I wasn't happy with it. On the podcast, I said that I was going to release Jackknife Chicken Truck on May 9th. And here it is, May 28th, 2018 at 10:22 p.m. And I'm recording a new episode 0. So what will this podcast be about? I've had a lot of ideas. One idea was, hey, I can show pictures of jackknives. Like trucks that had accidents. But that's kind of morbid. I can show pictures of trucks. That'd be kind of interesting. I could talk about chicken recipes. I could do interviews, and I could ask questions about what people do and whatnot. Kind of like a late night show. But at the same time, I would always ask them, what's your favorite truck? What's your favorite chicken recipe? And have you ever seen a truck that jackknifed? But that'd be like a one-trick pony. But very literal to the name of the top podcast. I kind of want this podcast to be me talking about WTF moments. Or things that interest me. Or things that cross my mind that I want to talk about that I don't want to be interrupted by Joe. Because Joe has a tendency to take over the show. But not today, because this is my show. My one mic show, as I like to call it. I'm still on the fence about doing interviews. So, one of the things that bothers me a lot, I just turned 40 on April 16th. And I get the same question all the time. Well, I get serious questions that bother me. What's it like being 40? Well, it felt the same as being 39. You don't really have you don't have a different change of feeling just because you turned a certain age. When I got married to my wife, how's it feel being married? The same as not being married. Like the second I said I do, it felt the same exact way. I mean, technically, it's just on paper. I'm married. Yeah, but I've been with my wife for about 9 years now. It'll be 10 years on March 20th. But we got married on September 3rd, 2016. So, people always ask, like, what does it feel to be blank? Or how's it different from none? It's not different. Why ask that stupid question? Are you trying to make conversation? Ask me about the weather. Then I can whip up my phone and use Weather Underground or Dark Sky to figure out the weather and talk to you about it. Or the phase of the moon. Or something I can talk about. But I guess people are just trying to make conversation. So here I am, like I said, an hour and a half before May 9th, when this is supposed to be released, redoing this episode. Why, you ask? Well, I forgot that I said I was going to do this on May 9th. And besides, if worst case scenario, I could have released this other episode that might not ever see the air day. But you know what? I decided I'm going to do a new episode. So I started at like 8:30. I decided I was going to sit down here and figure this out. Earlier today, I was checking out the website what it's going to live on, and realized, hey, you need the website. So I set that up. But I needed a image for the podcast. So I called my friend Chris to draw me an image. I've got a holder image for now, which will probably be changed later. But hopefully that won't be that big of a deal. The other thing I decided to do was sit here and make sure the audio sounded good. I wasted an entire hour trying to figure out what was wrong with my audio until I realized I was recording the wrong microphone. No matter what I did to the mixer, audio sounded the same. I unplugged the mixer and I got audio, which I thought was crazy. And then I realized Joel, maybe you didn't get enough sleep last night. Because if you unplug the power to the mixer, there should be no power to the microphone. And therefore your episode shouldn't record. But then sure it did. And then I realized, you're recording on the wrong microphone, you idiot. That's why your podcast doesn't sound like your other podcasts. During that hour, though, I did find out the proper way to set up my mixer so that everything sounds right. This should be one of the best sounding episodes I've ever done for anything. And hopefully going forward, episodes, as of now, of anything I do will sound even better. If I can't figure something out, I Google it. If I can't Google it, I'll check YouTube. If I can't check out YouTube, I will find somebody who knows something about what I need to figure out. I'm very resourceful, and I don't usually give up. I'm very tenacious and stubborn. That's just one of my traits. I'm always trying to figure things out. I have a 3D printer, which I've been having issues with. But I find out if I walk away from things sometimes, my subconscious can figure it out for me. Sometimes, beating it to death doesn't work. Sometimes you need to think of another way to beat it to death. I know another question people always say is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. What if you put that elephant into a blender and you drank it instead? I'm that kind of guy that thinks outside the box. Or goes, wait a second, why are we doing it this way? Why don't we try something different? I would like to call myself a professional problem solver. I love figuring out technical problems. That's one of the things that kept me going when I did IT. No matter what happened, I usually figured out a solution. If I couldn't figure out a solution, well, I kept looking. My biggest achievement was when I'd hear things such as, 5 other people tried to figure this out and they couldn't do it, and you did it in 30 seconds. I remember one time, I was working at the school district, and the principal was doing a presentation, and couldn't use a computer to swap from the LCD screen to the projector. I walked in, hit 2 buttons, and it worked. From what I heard, he was very upset about that because I made him look stupid. But you know what? That was my intent. When I have a project that we'll fix or figure out, I work on it until it's done. This weekend, I was supposed to go flying with a couple friends out in Latrobe, and I had a couple of drones I had to fix. I sat down all day Saturday until 4 a.m., putting things together, figuring things out, and getting things put back. And you know what I did on Sunday? I flew. I don't give up. And if I do give up, it's only temporary. I'll come back to it. Or hopefully I can find someone else to help me figure it out. A lot of times I'll work on a problem for hours, walk away from it, go to bed, wake up the next morning, or even walk away and just as I was about to sit down I realize, hey, try this. I'm also notorious for going to work, and the second I sit down at work, I figure out the solution. Not to wait 8 hours to go home and figure it out. Oh well. I guess I've talked long enough. Hopefully you enjoyed Jackknife Chicken Truck. Look for me on jackknifechickentruck.com, Facebook. I'll set Twitter and everything else up later. But I said this episode would be out on May 9th, and by God, it will be out. Thank you. Have a good day, good night, wherever you are. Jackknife Chicken Truck out.